Hi, I'm Bob Herbert. Welcome to OpEd.tv. The United States has entered a dark place. It's more than troubling, it's tragic. Mass shootings occur virtually every day. No one is surprised to hear that some gunmen armed with weapons of war invaded a school and slaughtered pupils, teachers, administrators, custodians. Anti-Semitic attacks have become commonplace. Racism and white supremacist zealotry is increasingly out in the open, in your face. The Supreme Court has gone rogue, rolling back the clock on abortion rights, gun safety, LGBTQ rights, and more in one nakedly political ruling after another. And the politics on the right in the Republican Party have become so utterly vile, so dangerously unrestrained, that we had to endure a violent insurrection aimed at overturning the results of a presidential election. The insurrectionists, in their crazed attack on the U.S. Capitol, urged that the Vice President of the United States be lynched. Several people died in or as a result of the insurrection, and the cherished American tradition of the peaceful transfer of power was trashed. This didn't all start with Donald Trump, but he opened the doors wide to the chaos and the madness, and he encouraged the lowlifes to come pouring through. I'll talk about all of this and about the role and responsibilities of the press when it comes to covering these extraordinary events with one of my favorite guests, Eric Alterman. He's an historian, a journalist, a distinguished professor of English at our own Brooklyn College, and the former media columnist for The Nation magazine. Eric, welcome.
Always a pleasure, Bob.
Great to have you here. So,
as depressing as we get.
As depressing as these issues have become, I agree. One of the big problems seems that the press is unable to portray how perverse and how dangerous the Republican Party and its leadership have become. And one of the things I'd like you to talk about is there's this gruesome reality that we're going through that Trump and the GOP have led us into. So talk about that a little bit, describe it, and explain why it's so different from what came before.
Well, first of all, I want to say, I published my first article in The Nation in March of 1983. You were publishing before that. You look younger than I am, but
but I'm not.
Yeah. If you had come to either one of us any time in the next 20 years and said, "Here's the hellscape we're going to be dealing with,"
right,
it would not have been credible. It was literally unimaginable. And I think part of the problem today is that it's unimaginable.
Right.
I mean, what you just said, your introduction, would be considered quite partisan, quite harsh. And it wasn't at all. It was actually too kind.
A statement of fact.
No, but it was. You left out the part where Donald Trump said, "Yeah, a good idea. Let's lynch the vice president."
Yeah.
You left out that he's on trial for rape. You left out that his business is completely corrupt. You left out that he was selling out the country to Putin. I mean, so much, and that's part of the problem. There's so much going on. You can't keep track of it. It's part of their genius is they keep coming at you.
I was just going to say, it works to their advantage.
I mean, book burning, you know.
In the United States of America in the 21st century.
They're going after Disney. How can you go after Disney? You know, I would like to go after Disney. The lines are long. It's overpriced. You know, they're attacking the CIA. They're attacking the police. What's going on?
The FBI, the Republican Party is attacking
They want to dismantle the FBI.
Where are we?
They want to dismantle. Anyway, I mean, Donald Trump is going to be, in all likelihood, the Republican nominee, as well as under multiple indictment at a time. That's kind of hard to get your head around. Now, there's two issues here that you and I are never going to solve, but they're really fascinating. One is how is it that one of the two major parties in the United States is going to endorse for its candidate for president a man who is guilty of all these crimes and also is now openly supporting the insurrection in which policemen were killed and another was led to suicide. And
threatening to issue pardons if he becomes elected again.
right, having this picture taken with someone who said they wanted to kill a security guard. And that's, again, we're only scratching the surface here. So how is it that one of the parties is in thrall to this individual, who, by the way, gives all signs every day of being emotionally and mentally disturbed in such a way that one imagines he could even be a danger to the people around him. That's number one. And number two, how is it that our media, led by the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and the top networks, cover these things as if they're no different than previous disagreements between
business as usual?
Yeah, and hence the sense of alarm that anyone who pays close attention and is not somehow enthralled to these crazy conspiracy theories that rule the Republican Party feel is not widely felt, or not sufficiently widely felt. I actually, this is going to sound weird, but the Dobbs decision made me more optimistic for our country. I wrote a book, came out I think in 2012, on the history of American liberalism, called The Cause. Good book. It's like really long. It's 500 pages.
It was a good book.
Yeah, thanks. And I said in that book that I looked at the way abortion had gone into the courts, and therefore liberalism lost one of the strongest selling points that it had in terms of giving people the right to determine their own future.
Right.
And as long as people felt like this was taken care of, they didn't feel a need to be political. Being political was divisive and unpleasant. So what this court is doing, and what Trump has done to a considerable degree, is to show people that politics really matters. It really reaches into your life. Even if you live in the kind of bubble that you and I sort of live in, our lives are still pretty pleasant. Politics, the degree, the radicalism of Republican Party. I mean, would you send your daughter or your granddaughter to go to school in Florida now?
Right.
I mean, whoever thought of such a thing, that would be an issue?
Right. That's not something that comes to mind.
Right. Yeah.
Would have come to mind.
Right. So we're living in a new country with a extremely radical, in some ways fascist, major party.
The issue of fascism is now, it's not just that it has come up, it's a real issue now. And so I'd like you to pursue that, because we were talking about the introduction, as harsh as it was, is still understated. There is the real danger of fascism when we look at what's happening with the courts, when we look at Donald Trump, when we look at the radicalization of the Republican Party and that sort of thing. And I think for those who remember the post-World War II decades, the 3 or 4 decades after that, for those who don't remember that period, it's hard to have a sense of fascism. Talk a little bit about what fascism is and why we should be concerned about that sort of thing actually taking place in the United States right now.
Yeah, well, the problem with talking about what fascism is that it takes many forms. And I think that has hurt our ability to imagine it happening here. I mean, this is not Nazi Germany, this is not Mussolini's Italy.
Right.
It's not Spain under Franco. It's our own special American form of fascism.
It's American, it's the authoritarianism that is.
Right, it's authoritarianism, it's anti-democratic. But I think again, I could go on for the whole half hour and more about it. But I think the simplest way to think about it is that it's an ideology of hate. It's about attacking one's perceived enemies. And when you think about the Republican Party today, they don't govern. They don't have any policies actually that in any way would address the problems that
If you said in terms of policies, what does that party stand for?
Right,
you draw a blank.
They're against crime, but they don't want to have an FBI. I mean, and they want to and they want to pardon murderers. They want to
Exactly.
pardon
Right.
if they're killing the right people.
Yeah.
So real, and they're about to. There's a good chance they're going to destroy the economy and much of the world economy. And it took them till like a few days ago to try to explain why that is, and actually they don't want to talk about that, the policies behind it, because if people paid attention to what those policies were, they'd be furious. No, but that's not what people support. They're not. It's not like this is the New Deal, this is the fair deal, this is Medicare for all. This is about sticking it to the people you hate.
Yep.
And I think you tied it to the decades in the aftermath of World War II. I think in the aftermath of World War II, two things happened. One is that the country became much more equal. It was a prosperous time economically, and therefore money was available to lift all boats.
Yep.
But it grew very unequally geographically, so that the growth was in the cities and in places tied to universities and education. And the places that don't have those things, rural areas and the Deep South, we never had any unions or anything like that, and they lost people. Of course, there was a great migration of black people from there. They are left behind. And so they feel that their future has been stolen from them. And who stole it? Well, it's the Democratic Party. It's the elites, the well-educated, and the immigrants and people of color.
Right.
And in the middle, who are getting screwed more than anyone by the economics of the Republican Party, they're putting their anger and their hatred and their fear ahead of their self-interest. And to some degree, it's an indictment of the Democratic Party that they can't get this message across.
For a long time, the Democrats have had trouble messaging, but recently, it seems to me, just looking at what's going on in this country, I don't understand why it's so difficult to form a coherent and powerful message against some of the things that are going on, or some of the things that the Republicans favor. They're beginning to get some traction on abortion, for example. But they haven't been able to do really good messaging on gun rights, despite all these horrible massacres that we've gone through. And they haven't even been able to make it clear that it's the Republican Party that's been attacking Social Security and Medicare. Those are like easy political issues. So I just don't get it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the press. I mean, a free press is supposed to be the way that people get their information, which helps to make them make better informed choices as voters. But the press does not seem to know how to grapple with the enormity of what's going on and with how extreme some of the issues are with Trump in particular, but with the Republican Party and the right in general. Why is it struggling so hard? We have so many media outlets now. Why has it been so hard for the press to get a handle on this?
Again, a lot of reasons, could take a lot of time. As simply as I can put it, there's really two presses in this country, two media systems and one outlier. The outlier is the liberal media, which is not the New York Times or CBS News or the Washington Post. It's
despite what the right
right.
says.
It's the left. I used when I had a column in The Nation for 25 years, press column, I called it the liberal media. Because I was saying, I'm the liberal media, guys, not those guys. Those are the guys I'm attacking.
When I was writing for 18 years, writing an op-ed column at the New York Times, I used to hear all this. People used to say to me, "How can you work for that left-wing rag?"
Right.
I go, "What are you talking about? What paper are you talking about?"
Right. So we have two media ecosystems. One on the right, which is actually a much bigger part of the media than it is of the public, but it drives the conversation very powerfully. It moves the 50-yard line well into what used to be far right territory, and it lies. I mean, I've been saying that Fox. I actually won an award for a column I wrote about called "What is Fox News?" because it's not a news organization. That was way back, I think, in 2010. But the difference between the right-wing media and the left-wing media is that the right-wing media lies, and the left-wing media tells you the part of the story it wants you to hear, but it doesn't lie.
Right.
And you can take their facts and argue with them. And if they're good, they will present the other side and explain why they're right. So on the one hand, you have an ideological group of propagandists that are called news, but they're not news. And they are in competition, particularly financially, with the mainstream media, which feels it needs to give you both sides of everything. NPR, considered left-wing, it's actually both sides.
Right.
They're very nervous about being called liberal. Same with PBS. New York Times, of course, is the same thing. They have a number of conservative columnists, and whenever they write a story, there was one incredibly egregious story. Now I can't remember. I just remember it's by Jonathan Weissman, where he was covering an issue, and he said, it really doesn't matter what is true. It matters that these people believe this and these people believe that. So they're not, and this is, he said it out loud, but it's quite common. They feel that it's partisan to take a position on behalf of truth over lies. That's one problem.
Right.
A second problem is all of the pressure on the media comes from the right. The left is no good at pressuring reporters and journalists, and they feel it, and they don't want the hassle. And the third thing is that they rely on their sources, and if they tell the truth about their Republican sources and what we just said, how they're not really interested in governing and they're making ridiculous things. A perfect example of this is the current fight over whether or not the economy will be destroyed. The Republicans under Donald Trump raised the debt limit in a clean way 3 times.
No problem.
With no problem. Now all of a sudden, the bills that we've already got, it's a credit card bill that you've already signed, you've already got the merchandise. They're saying we're not going to pay it unless we get what we want. They are holding the global economy hostage. And story after story is saying, what is Biden going to do? Will Biden find a way through this?
And this is another area where I think the Democrats have been terrible at messaging.
Absolutely.
Because you just laid it out. This is a question of paying the bills. This is not a question of getting your economy under control or if you think this should be cut or that should be cut. This is a case of you ran up these bills and you have an obligation to pay them. I came of age during the Warren Court.
Mm-hmm.
Very liberal court, but also so many profound decisions came out of that court and basically led to the freedoms that so many of us enjoy today. If not for the Warren Court, I never would have been able to have the career that I had.
Pretty profound.
But talk about that a little bit, about the Supreme Court and what happened to the Supreme Court.
First of all, one thing that to remember about the Warren Court is that Earl Warren was a Republican, appointed by a Republican. Imagine that.
Republican from California,
that.
appointed by Dwight Eisenhower.
Right. So bringing up the Warren Court reminds me of something that happened to me when I was in high school, believe it or not. Just this week, I was reminded of it because this week it was announced that Justice John Paul Stevens' papers are being opened. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to that particularly because when I was a kid, when I was a senior in high school, I went on this nerdy thing called Presidential Classroom where they, you meet leaders. My school sent me and another friend of mine. And somehow her family knew John Paul Stevens' family. So he met with the two of us for an hour, 2 high school kids.
Wow.
Supreme Court. And we said to him, because we were both in a constitutional law class at the high school that we went to, and we said, Warren had some pretty thin constitutional justification. We thought we were really smart, And we brought up Brown v. Board.
Right.
And he said, and I still don't know exactly how I feel about this, but it's a sign of the times. He said before Earl Warren made a decision, he asked himself, is it right? Is it right? And if he thought it was right, he would fight with the rest of us until we understood in our own way why it was right. And that sense of, is it right, is completely gone. Now the question is, can we get away with it? I mean, all the things we're learning about the Supreme Court, the personal corruption, the things that were hidden, the decisions that are clearly, this drug has been used safely for 17 years, and this one judge doesn't like it.
It's an insane decision.
And they've discredited themselves, and they don't care because we've lost a sense in our society to ask that question: is it right? We don't have a shared morality anymore.
They rolled back voting rights on the basis of their contention that you don't have discrimination in voting essentially anymore. And then immediately, it seemed almost like it was like minutes after that decision came down, we started getting these terrible voter suppression initiatives in places like South Carolina and Texas and that sort of thing. And of course now it's just, and in fact I'd like you to talk about this a little bit. Voting rights is under such great assault now. It's terrible. The Republicans understand that they don't have a majority in terms of the electorate, so they're trying to prevent as many people on the other side from voting as possible. So that's kids on college campuses, voter suppression. But how do you fight? How do you fight back against this now? And maybe an unfair question, but like all the other issues, why doesn't the press do a better job of covering it?
Well, because, I mean, the Republicans have lost 4 out of 5 popular elections, and they're going to keep losing them.
Yes.
Because demographically, the country is moving away from them, and they are narrowing their message so that it just appeals to older white men and people who like to see older white men in charge of things. Right. So they have to play by hook or by crook. And there was a book published by Roy Teixeira and John Judas about 20 years ago called The Emerging Democratic Majority. Mm-hmm. And it based it on demography. And the demography part was basically correct. But what they didn't get was how hard it was to turn demography into destiny via democracy. Right. I should remember, that's a good phrase. I like alliteration.
And that's what we're witnessing.
Right. So, but again, here's the distinction. So, I don't think the election will be stolen in 2024, the presidential election, because the Democrats were able to elect a Supreme Court in Wisconsin that will be fair-minded, and they won't be able to overturn it as the Republican court was planning to do. Election. Right, but man, you had to fight just to have a fair election. Like, one side wants to play by the rules, and the other side doesn't care about the rules because the rules will lead to their defeat because they're a minority. And again, there's 2 issues here. One is, if one side's playing by the rules, they're going to lose against the side that's not playing by the rules. I mean, if you're running a marathon and a guy has a friend with a car and he gets in the car and he drives, he's going to beat you, you know? So you can't play by those rules. And the second thing is if you're doing a both sides story, well, the Republicans say this and the Democrats say that, you have to point out that one side is playing by the rules and one side is subverting the rules. But again, that sounds partisan. And in addition to which, you'll get your Republican sources angry, and you'll get a lot of hassles from the right. And you won't get any congratulations from the left. In fact, your editor will say, you know, you're making trouble for us, and we don't need that kind of trouble. And maybe we've got an advertiser who's not that crazy about it. So the structure of the system, and we haven't even talked about the power of money in our politics. But
we'll have to do another show.
Yeah, but the structure of our system is anti-democratic, and both small d and big D, and it sounds, you know, it sounds both partisan and anti-American to say those things.
You're a professor at Brooklyn College. A lot of kids in school now were born in the 21st century, which kind of blows my mind.
Now that you mention it.
So the young people that you encounter, not just the ones that you teach, are they aware of how strange and dangerous this moment is, or are they so used to the likes of Trump and what the Republican Party has become that they think this is normal?
Well, I teach, proud to say, at what I believe is the most diverse campus in America, and certainly in the most diverse.
I used to teach at Brooklyn College.
In the most diverse borough in America. Yeah. And you and I live in a bubble, but they live in a different bubble. They live in a bubble where it's cool to be whatever you are. Mm-hmm. And they hear about Trump, and you know, they get their news from TikTok and Facebook, and maybe not even Facebook,
That's
but
a little frightening.
Instagram, and they don't. It's another world to them. It's another world, and particularly where I teach, these kids have jobs. A lot of them have family responsibilities, and based on who they are and where their neighborhood is, they know how to vote, but And maybe, again, the Dobbs decision, they feel will reach into their lives. Social Security and Medicare are very important to their families. But basically, we're at least two countries now. In Brooklyn, they live in one country, and the people supporting Trump live in a different country. And actually, I think that's, in a large measure, where the future of our country lies. I think because of Dobbs and book burnings and attack on librarians and school shootings, I think more and more people are going to move to places where their people like them are, and we'll have two separate countries. But those people who live in Utah are going to have the same amount of power as the millions of people who live in California, New York, et cetera.
But we can always count on the Republican Party to take it too far, go all the way back to Watergate and probably before that. They come into power and then they can't restrain themselves. They just always go too far. We've run out of time, much to my chagrin. We've been talking with Eric Alterman. Thank you, Eric, for coming in. I'm Bob Herbert. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.